weren't morally what they wanted for normally, but because they needed to keep their job, they chose to do something that if the situation was different, they wouldn't have done it. So, well, the question, as soon as that happens, is you then realize you're not making a medical decision, you're actually making a values decision. And what you've demonstrated is your values change based on the external environment. Instead of coming to a place inside your life where you're so deeply connected that you are rooted in your values and they don't change to the environment, what happens is your interaction with the environment changes, not the values themselves. And so that caused a lot of confusion, which, fear is perpetuated from. And fear also causes division. And so therefore, if you look at communities break down because of division. I mean, I'm still struggling to understand. Back in 2000 in Australia, something happened with toilet paper, and I'm really not too sure what it was, but you couldn't for the life of you get toilet paper. And people were in the shops arguing and fighting over toilet paper, which, has so much irony to me. And I could go totally left field and into the gutter about that, but I won't. But I still scratch my head because there was actually no issue with toilet paper. And it never became an issue, except because the fear created it. And that's what fear does. Fear creates the thing, the movie that it's actually telling you to get away from. Now, when you do deep work with a person, you help them go deep inside and go right in and actually embrace the fear, because you can't push fear away. It locks down and then will surface in many different ways, particularly behavioral patterns. But when you draw the actual emotion in, you sit in it, what happens is quite regularly fear is linked to a belief of safety. And a lot of people believe that safety is the fundamental human condition. It's not actually, but it's belonging, which is the fundamental condition. And people will give up their safety to belong. And it's a really fascinating thing. You look at any life-threatening situations, like where a family is involved and stuff, and love, which is linked to belonging, people will do fascinating things. A good friend of mine lost his life in a canyoning incident in Europe when his brother, he had three brothers, and they were all doing a canyoning thing, and a flash flood came through the canyon. His brother was getting swept away. He dived in, saved his brother, and gave his own life. Truly courageous thing. And now, in the moment, he wouldn't have thought it courageous. He just would have done it because of love and the sense of belonging for the family. So fear is a separative emotion, whereas love is a unifying emotion. And Australia is a great example, but realistically, Australia is a microcosm of the globe. And I think America, you had the Standing Rock thing. You've still got a lot of issues amongst your past and your present and into your future. The last couple of weeks just demonstrated that. But in Australia, one of the things is we still have a lot of guilt and shame sitting around about the last 200 years. Instead of realizing that in this moment, what we can do is we can go stop to that guilt and shame, and we can build from a place of love and unity, and we can create a future which is in that. But at the moment, what most people are trying to do, and I say most people because there's quite a few people actually, that an emergence of what I'm talking about that's happening. And that is that we go, okay, we acknowledge the past. It's not that I don't acknowledge the past, but I'm not bringing the past into the present to actually create the future. What I'll do is I'll acknowledge the past, I'll learn from the past, which means the healing can happen. And I'll take the lesson of the past, and the lesson of the past is division creates pain. In essence, if you look at every narrative, every story, every history, division will always create pain. So obviously, if I'm to learn from that, then unifying is the way forward. That would be the lesson. How do I unify? Fear or love? It's love. And the ancient sages have always said there's only two emotions, fear and love. But psychologists would argue, but anyway. So the point is we then create in this moment from love, and we unify moving forward. We acknowledge everyone's differences because that's what gives beauty. Like trees, even the same species of trees are different. But if you look, and I'm looking out into a nature reserve at the moment, and like there's so much going on out there, but it's all actually in harmony. It's not sustaining. There's no sustainability out there. It's actually in harmony because there's death and there's birth constantly happening in this cycle. And it's all done in unison.
Right. So nature is harmonious. Sustainability gets talked about in the picture when you add man, and we kind of screw up the harmony, and we need to take different actions to kind of save what we've just been destroying. But
Yeah.
I love all this talk of acting from fear and how it really shuts the brain down because we're seeing across the globe more and more democracies are choosing more authoritarian leaders. So that's to me that populace is really living in fear. So they want to. It's almost like they want to be told what to do and feel safe. Does that make
Yeah,
sense? Yeah.
total sense. I mean, one of the biggest reasons that was going on in the last few years is people actually fear death so much. Now, there's a beautiful man that wrote in 1941 a book called Escape from Freedom. His name was Erich Fromm. He was a Jewish psychiatrist at the time, a German psychiatrist. I don't know if he was Jewish, but he wrote about the rise of fascism when it was happening. And not only did he write about it, he gave you a history of Western psychology dating way back to the Roman times as to how the psychology of the West had shifted at certain stages to come into a place where it was susceptible for and needed in a place fascism to slot in and fill something. This is what we forget. Something will always grow because there's a need. Now, if it's an unconscious growth, then quite regularly there'll be a lot of collateral damage and cancer, etc. But if it's a conscious growth, it doesn't have to be that way. It can actually be something completely beautiful and rich and harmonious. And that's actually the premise of what I refer to and what I teach is harmonic leadership. But it all